Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good to see you all. And please take your seat. Good morning, everyone, and good to see you all, and thank you for joining us this morning. I will first mention that the event will be recorded and streamed. We have a group of people following us online. They will have a live chat available, but if they have any questions, please send your questions to the email indicated on the screen. My name is Bjarte Håvik. I'm the manager for innovation and collaboration in the life science cluster. And on behalf of the cluster and our member companies, AFRY and Amtunga, I would like to welcome you today to this seminar, a sneak peek into the future. I foresee that this will be an exciting travel into the future of production facilities and how they are exposed to new trends in automation, monitoring, and control systems. We will approach the new trends in 5 separate talks, followed by a short break and a panel discussion. But first, AFRY and Amtunga will also present their companies and what they are doing and who they are. So I would like to introduce Katrin Hedvall, Business Unit Manager at AFRY, also head of the food and pharmaceutical team, having projects both in Sweden and Norway, aimed at developing the future of this industry. We're looking forward to your talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bjarte. Just switch. And we're here today together with Amtunga, which we have a close cooperation with, and I think I speak for both of us when I say that we are very happy to be here and have this opportunity to share some of the thoughts that we have for the future, and also discuss with you the possibilities that the pharma industry has going on. The life science cluster is of great importance for us, with over 100 members. You facilitate collaboration and network meetings like this, and they think that knowledge sharing and this kind of collaboration is really key to develop the pharma industry in the world. And we are AFRY. In 2019, ÅF and Peyri, 2 companies, joined forces with the aim to have a global engineering, consulting and advisory company, focusing a lot on the sustainability. It was 2 very strong brands, not perhaps so international useful with all those strange letters. So in November 2019, we joined together under a new common brand, and that's AFRY, which is the combination of the letters in the former company's names. As I said, we have a strong focus in making sustainability and also doing that with digitalization. We have a mission to accelerate the transition towards a sustainable society. And we do that actually by doing 3 things. We lead by example. We make sure that we transform our own company. And we also focus a lot on finding solutions that will help sort of small startups, new ways of thinking to grow big and to go into the market and have an impact. And we have defined 4 segments, which food and life science is one of them, that we see as that have great potential and also are areas where we have extensive knowledge, so we can actually make a difference there. So if we have a quick look at AFRY then, we are about 7,000 employees globally. We are working within the infra, energy and industry sectors. We have offices in more than 40 countries and projects in over 100. And we are divided into 6 divisions. And food and pharma, which we come from, the people that are here today, we are part of the industrial and digital solution division. But we cooperate a lot with the other divisions as well. For example, Advancia, that we have here in Norway, who is really strong within the infrastructure. And as you also can see, food and life science is one of those transforming segments that AFRY as a company put a lot of focus and energy into. So the food and pharma team then, we are about 500 colleagues. We are experts within process design, within automation, digitalization, and IT. We also have validation competences doing GMP and GAP. We do everything from our base advisory services, where we help the client goes into their organization and are support in different ways, to turnkey projects, brownfield, greenfield, lump sum assignments. But we also, coming back to this, accelerating the transition towards a sustainable society, work with small companies, sort of young companies with great ideas, perhaps sustainable products, and we support them to scale up in different ways, to see how to be cost effective and how to manage to grow from a good idea to a big company. And together with me today, I gather both colleagues from AFRY and from Emtunga, and they will have the chance to present themselves just in a bit as we go along. But you will hear Lars Wikström from AFRY, Anders Ernblad from AFRY, Mikael Jamanen-Nolin from AFRY, Rickard Tillander from Emtunga, and Christine Schultz from AFRY today. And they will share their thoughts. But first, Rickard, I now presented AFRY a bit. Yep. So we need to know about Emtunga as well, I think.
So, Emtunga is a company in the modular business, and we have our background in the offshore industry, where we have for a very long time built living quarters for oil and gas industry. And there we can see that nowadays and going forward, the offshore wind power is emerging heavily and fast. But some time back in the days, a person realized that this way of building facilities could actually be used for pharmaceutical industry. And in those days, it was more than about being able to maybe build a quality facility in a third world country where you have quality problems and so on. But that has changed, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. We also are building different kind of technical buildings for different industries and provide engineering services as well. And when it comes to pharma, we've been working with this for a long time with many of the major pharma companies. That has really driven us into a position where quality is a key and lean processes and so on. So that is just a brief overview of Emtunga as a company. And with that, I hand over to Anders.
Thank you, Rickard. Okay, so let's move then in to the subject of this talk today. And I will start off talking a little bit about flexible manufacturing. My name is Anders Ernblad. As Katrin said before, I'm working as a senior product manager with AFRY in the food and pharma business. Been working with food and pharma, mainly pharma, for the past 25 years. So if we look into the situation where the life science industry is today, we are subject to quite a lot of trends and drivers, both on a global level, but also on the industrial level. If we look on the macro drivers, if we look on the global level, we're all aware of the fact that we have a changing demographic in the world. People are getting older. We have countries getting wealthier, or at least moving out of poverty. The middle class is getting larger. People simply live longer. We also have the COVID-19 pandemic. We cannot, we still see the effects of that, which has impacted our industry and of course the entire world for the last 2-3 years. Another area which is important now, of course, is security. When we're moving into a more and more digital world, data is going to be or is one of the future, let's say, high-value products. But that also means that it's something that people want to get hold of, or maybe even steal. We will see more and more of espionage, data security, and so on. The digital transformation, as I mentioned, is a key driver, as well as what could be called nationalism or self-sufficiency. We did see during the pandemic that importing say products from all over the world did not, the supply chains did not work the way we anticipated, and we also got situations where countries or regions actually held on to their resources and did not want to export them to other parts of the world. So all these things are impacting our industry at the moment. Of course, for the life science specifically, data, as I said, is the new currency. Data, big data, is and will be a future big trend and big important part of what we do. But we have a situation where the plants, the pharmaceutical plants of today, are aging. A lot of them are built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We have not the automation levels that are required for the future, maybe. We have high inventory, we have inconsistent qualities, and so on. Price, cost is a big trend in the pharma space, because I mean it is a almost everything that is done in the pharma state by the end of the day is tax financed. So governments are putting pressure on the pharma industry to be more effective, to be more cost effective. And then, of course, compliance is a big part of that. So compliance costs need to be more efficient. Time to market, we saw with the vaccines that were developed during the COVID-19 pandemic, that time to market is going to be key for the future. As most of you know, in the pharmaceutical industry, we have development times of up to 7 or 10 years from you start the development of a pharmaceutical drug till it's on the market. Going forward, we need to move that and shorten those times significantly. And then for the area which I will come back to slightly more, the process technology, we are going more and more towards modular designs, both from the facility point of view, which Rika will come back and talk about later on, but also from the process point of view. Single-use technology has been developing significantly over the last 10 years and is now a key technology which is implemented and will develop even further. Continuous manufacturing is one of these things where the pharmaceutical industry traditionally has not worked with continuous manufacturing. It's been batch based. But again, it is something that is now moving both into the traditional chemical and dry powder manufacturing, but also into biopharmaceuticals. And of course, personalized medicine, gene technologies, and cell therapies, where you specialize the therapy for the specific patient or a very small patient group is another strong trend in the industry. And lastly, we have the entire IT and OT technology, cloud computing, virtualization, where we move the servers and workstations and controllers into virtual environments. We have mobile technologies where both patients and let's say operators become much more mobile. The technology and the data and the information is available wherever you are. With digital twins, where you can digitalize a complete plant, simulate it offline, and optimize it, and then just implement it very easily. And Christine will come back to and talk a little bit about these areas for. And the connectivity, where let's say everything is interconnected, all technology and so on is interconnected. But I will talk a little bit now about the facilities that we see now and going into the future, because one of the challenges today is that the process technology that we use today might not necessarily be the process technology that is going to be applicable tomorrow or next year or in 3 years' time. Which means that when and also when we look at the sizes of batches, the sizes and volumes of manufactured pharmaceuticals, we are looking into much smaller batches, smaller volumes, but more different pharmaceuticals. And that means that facilities that we build now need to have a very high portion of flexibility. As we said, time to market means that the R&D and process development will go on in parallel with building up the process manufacturing facility, meaning that you might not even know what the process that you're going to produce in the facility will be when you start building it. There are new approval processes which will make it faster when it comes to approving the medicines. As I said, smaller capacity, higher flexibility. Cost need to be more cost efficient, and the technology issues. So when we look at, and this is an example of what I would like to call more of a stage, meaning that the facility is a stage. The processes that you set up in the facility are the place. So what you build is a facility which has a support area where you come in and get out of the facility. You have a clean room area with clean rooms, open ballroom clean rooms, where you have the necessary media, the necessary clean room classes and so on, but the processes are not fixed. The processes are mobile units that can be moved in and moved out depending on what process you want to run the facility. And then you have a corridor system around that so that you can transport and move around. Challenges with this, of course, is with cross-contamination and so on, and you need to handle these things in the facility. But this enables you to build a facility where you maybe start off with one type of process, and then you move into something completely different. On the right-hand side, we have an example. This is a project I was involved in myself. It's a project where we started off having wave technology, bioreactors, and one processing. Turned out that product that was going to be produced there, it failed. Changed over to be fixed bed reactors instead. Changed the entire process, but the clean rooms were the same. The facility was the same. The process was another one. As I mentioned, then single-use technology, it has been available, it is available in the market, and it is more and more being the let's say preferred technology in the pharma space. And as of today, most of the steps in biomanufacturing are actually available as single-use technology. Of course, bioreactors with C-trains, stirred bioreactors, fixed bed bioreactors. We have an example on the right-hand side here, which is the PAL isolis fixed bed reactor. We have a wave reactor down here, but also in the downstream processing is an example of a single-use filling equipment. You have freezing and thawing equipment available in this space as well. And if you look at the single-use technology compared to conventional stainless steel, there are of course advantages and disadvantages of both of them, but significantly when it comes to the single-use technology, the advantages are on the, let's say, energy side. You consume much less energy with single-use technology because we don't have any cleaning requirements. So cleaning is another area where you have a clear advantage. Maintenance is normally more easy because the equipment is less complicated. The disadvantages are obvious, maybe. Consumables, you consume more product. You have plastic, and that also impacts your supply chain. You need to have these plastic materials, the bags, the hoses and everything on stock in order to run your production. And the environmental impact is another discussion. But actually, if you look at it, and this is an investigation which was done some 10, 15 years ago, but if you look at it, the environmental impact of single-use technology versus traditional technology is actually less. We consume less electricity, in this case 30%. The space needed for the single-use technology is almost half. The steelwork is of course less, and not least the water and chemical consumption is significantly lower. So why should you go the single-use way? Well, as I said, energy consumption much lower, CO2 footprint is lower, cost normally lower, and the project time when you run the project with a single-use solution is significantly shorter. With that, I would like to hand over to my colleague Mikael.
Thank you, Anders. Now I'm here to talk about something that's close to heart, actually, and part of my previous research areas: the factories of the future for biopharmaceutical production and R&D, really. Biopharmaceuticals are, as you may well know already, very important to us, and that's why I'm honing in on this very interesting subject. 8 out of 10 most used pharmaceuticals today are biopharma, and that's they can help us alleviate issues with diabetes, Crohn's disease, arthritis, and treat several types of cancers. However, costs are high. The development costs are astronomical. Production costs follow along that line. And that means that not everybody who needs these drugs can actually get them. They also require high dosage often. So that's one issue. One of the most cost-driving issues here is that of purification, the downstream processing. So that's why I'm focusing a bit on that as well. Traditionally, as Anders said, biopharmaceutical production, purification, has been done batch-wise, which means that a lot of manual labor is required to do all the purification steps, transfer material, everything like that. That is for both discovering the next API, developing the process, and manufacturing the target molecule, of course. With governmental regulation demanding also that process and product being filed together, that further means that we cannot have modifications, improvements after filing. So the processes are designed to be robust above all else. And the compromise here is inefficiency and inflexibility, which further means that we will have expensive processes and expensive products. And again, we will have a small number of different pharmaceuticals that are produced in a large number, or rather large amounts, and marketed as a wide range, used for, well, almost everybody and several different diseases. Now, however, we are going through a paradigm shift in terms of how we can manufacture and perform R&D activities here. And we are going through this paradigm shift from batch to continuous and integrated processes. And by switching from batch to continuous, we can automate processes and even make them autonomous with the clever use of data-driven AI techniques, which Christine here will talk a little bit more about later on. And through this, we can have more efficient, flexible processes by eliminating this manual labor. And this will lead to faster discoveries, new discoveries. This will lead to more development, or better developments, I should say, when it comes to how to actually run these processes as well. We will see a faster time to market. We will see lower costs across the board, which will drive opportunities in the future to have a larger set of pharmaceuticals, but in smaller amounts. And that will lead to opportunities for what we will introduce as personalized medicine in a little while. But these future factories, then, they demand a set of characteristics, a set of certain characteristics. And the first and foremost of these is sustainability. All processes, I mean, this is the number one building block looking ahead for all processes of mankind. We need to minimize the resource and energy demands of every single process, and it must come from renewables if we are to have a chance in the long run. Second is digitalized. They need to be digitalized. And digitalization brings many advantages, one of which is that of optimal traceability. We can have digital records kept automatically and coupled to the physical product through IDs in a database. And that eliminates a little bit of manual labor that is being done today. And digitalization also enables automation, which I would say is the third factor that we need to have here, the third characteristic. Because in order to fulfill the potential in terms of productivity, yield, equipment utilization, automation is required. It goes without saying almost. But in continuous operation, decision making is high-speed decision making based on precise measurements and continuously updating data. It just means that humans need not apply. We cannot keep up, so it needs to be automatic. And with automatic mathematical modeling, also making certain practical breakthroughs recently, we'll probably see a digital twin-based control, optimal control, becoming very useful and very simple to use in the near future. That's my hope, at least. And I would like to mention a particular tool set here that pertains especially to digitalization and automation. Of course, it plays into sustainability, but that is the process analytical technologies for monitoring and control. It's as a concept, it gathers different tools and activities for data acquisition, analysis, analytical chemistry, and continuous improvements. Quite good. But I would say that everything, all of these characteristics, they are captured in the concept of smart mini factories. The smart mini factories, this entails the integration of advanced downstream processes from continuous separation technologies such as chromatographic purification steps. We have filtration techniques, even reaction engineering. And this can be done already in lab to pilot scale. And by providing, these are all also digitalized, and by providing full digitalized processes that can be automated and optimized, of course, we have that part of sustainability. So now it just, the renewable part is, of course, what's lacking there. But with this, we can improve process flexibility Anders was talking about how we can have multiple purposes for a facility. That was the facility itself. Now we're talking about the processes. And this can be done by utilizing the same equipment in early stages. Now we're talking about for R&D for multiple purposes through the possibility to set up a series of tests that are to be run one after another without human intervention necessary at all, actually. This in turn will improve R&D productivity by allowing test campaigns that previously took weeks or months to now be run in mere days. And this will lead to faster improvements in the early R&D stages, both in finding the next big API and developing the processes, and this will be done in parallel. And this will also drive innovation in the manufacturing phase and the process efficiencies there as well. As a result, these kind of mini factories, they will drive and accelerate innovation across the board here and eventually enable truly personalized medicine, where we have medicine that is custom made to your DNA, to your affliction, and they can be made at your closest pharmacy on demand. That will replace the large centralized production lines that that have been the golden standard so far. It will also help us have more affordable, more readily available medicines for, everyone. So everybody who needs it can get it. And that's an important thing to me, at least. So to give an example then, a more concrete example of what is going on with regards to this vision of the future factories. This right here is the current state of the art. This is from a publication in June 2022 by Schwartz et al. And this is a fully automated, fully integrated, and fully continuous pilot scale process for producing an acid-sensitive monoclonal antibody. And everything here, from the upstream processing here with the bioreactor to the periodic countercurrent capture, virus inactivation, and the ion exchange polishing steps, all the way through to the target mAb, which should be about here somewhere, it's automatic, it's continuous, it's integrated. And this process was controlled and automated using a PAT interface, state-of-the-art, Python-based actually. It's called Orbit. It's been developed by a group at the Department of Chemical Engineering at Lund University over the past 5 years or so. And the equipment that was used is, equipment that you can get from your typical vendors. With that, they were able to have extremely good both end-to-end yield as well as productivity. End-to-end yield was over 90% for this process, and they were producing 1 gram of pure target mAb per day and liter of bioreactor volume. And that is to be compared with what is published information. The previous state of the art was 80 to 86% yield, for instance, and I think for batch, 70 to 80% is kind of the bang average. It's good enough. So this is quite a feat, and I think that the process and the performance in and of itself it's great work, and it's very exhilarating and exciting prospect for the future, I think. Now, finally, I would like to just show a picture of what it may look like in reality already, because it's easy to get stuck in the future and everything like that. But this is actually the downstream part of the process schematic that we just saw. On the left here, we have the PCC capture, we have the virus inactivation, and we have the ion exchange polishing steps. And in the front here, we have the dark gray machine. It's an ECTA Explorer being used for an automatic buffer preparation system. So the buffer is being prepared and fed to the machines automatically, basically. This right here is an Agilent HPLC being used for an automatic quality analysis system, which serves as the hardware then and lays the foundation for real-time release, for instance. On the right and in the back, we have a set of computer screens that we can use for setting up the software, the control software, and which then ensures the machine-to-machine communication so that everything can just be run smoothly during operation without any human intervention being needed during that. So, with that, I do hope that you have enjoyed this little glimpse of a vision of the future. And I am going to hand it over to Christine, who will talk a little bit about how we can leverage the fourth industrial revolution to our advantage.
Thank you, Mikael. Yeah, I'm pleased to be here. My name is Christine Schultz. I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for more than 20 years in all kind of different roles. Did my education in chemistry, so a lot of this is close to my heart. I'm going to talk about smarter solutions, more sustainable industry. The industrial revolution has had an enormous impact on pharmaceutical industry and life science. But I think compared to other industries, many of us are still in the industry 3.0. We are kind of proud of the automation and digitalization and all the computers that we have in place. But really, we should be here. This is like where we should be now, Industry 4.0, with the cyber and internet and clouds driving us all through. And I want to talk about how this Industry 4.0 can impact our life cycle management, the data storage. What can actually artificial intelligence take over? How can we use IT and OT solutions and digital twins, simulations and in silico testing? In silico testing is like when you use computerized systems to do the biological testing for you. And I will also show you PassX. It's where AFRY has met the future. This slide shows different impacts of. We can think that supply chain can have a non-touch supply by doing all the forecasting, sourcing, production planning. Everything of this is I've been working in factories for years, and we know that this is time-consuming, really, really time-consuming. And we are handling Excel sheets, which is really crap. And you can't validate Excel sheets. So think of what AI can do if they are allowed to take over these things. You can look at the overall equipment effectiveness, yield, and waste. They can also help us analyze and report the facilities' energy usage. This is actually it has a huge impact these days, with the energy prices really hitting the ceiling. So and also the whole life cycle management. You can use all the data you are gathering. You are gathering so much data when you are doing a batch. If you could do that, you can do your risk analysis based on all that data that you actually have. You just have to gather it somewhere and then analyze it. And you don't have to do that with your chemical or biochemical whatever education. You can let the machines do that. You can handle your deviation in a whole different ways. All your justifications, everything. You can reduce QC tests and all the lab costs. I believe that you can even get less human errors if you let the machines just drive the life cycle management. You can increase yield and OEE, reduce waste. You can, this is a repeat. When it comes to quality, I think that if you store all interventions electronically, you can use it as trends. You can trend the documentation. You can trend results. You can even trend operators' behaviors. And also taking care of the GDPR. And I really think that can be, I mean, all of us that has been working in the facility, we know that the worst thing you can do to a medical product is humans interventions. So get rid of the humans and get in the machines. And that doesn't mean that you lose your jobs. It just means that you can do what you are really good at, not the regular stuff that machines can do. You can reduce risks and also all data for justifications. That's all. That's the new in well, it's not new anymore, but for the last decade, the agencies says that okay, you can do whatever you want, but just justify it, and then you need data. So you need data stored. And I really think that regulatory, and I mean, we don't love regulatory. We don't do that. And time to market. Computer-aided simulations can help us shorten time to market. And digital twins simulate your plants. You can actually try it out. You can try it out before you actually do it, build it and do it. I want to present to you what AFRY has done to meet the future industries. We have founded in January this year an AFRY X division to take care of all these kind of simulations, automation, Industry 4.0, digital twins, and so what are we really doing in practice? We have partnered up with a German big pharma company, Körber Pharma, and we are proudly a certified partner of this company. So I will show you a little movie with my favorite guy, Gary. Hopefully this works.
Gary works as a process engineer in a biopharmaceutical company. He always wanted to put his love of technology into practice by helping to develop and optimize manufacturing processes. And he is happy that with his work he can contribute to making people healthy. But his work life is very different from what he had expected. Every other week, he has to write a manufacturing progress report, which means that on every other Monday, he needs to search for the data. Unfortunately, the information he needs is spread across multiple spreadsheets and other sources throughout various locations in the company. Gary now has to sort all these files, compile them, analyze them, and write the report. This process generally takes him 1 week, leaving Gary frustrated because this is not what he signed up for. What if we told Gary that all of these tedious steps could be reduced to just half a day? The answer for Gary is Wareham POSAC Savvy, the leading collaborative data analytics platform by Körber. POSAC Savvy collects all data from multiple data sources across different manufacturing sites. With just a few clicks, Gary will now be able to access the data, analyze the information, and generate an automated report. Therefore, instead of wasting his precious time, with the help of POSAC Savvy, Gary can spend his time more efficiently and focus on tasks matching his qualifications. Still, Gary is not alone. His colleagues also struggle with redundant tasks. They spend half of their working hours locating data, copying values from spreadsheet to spreadsheet, and creating plots. All tasks that should be automated. POSAC Savvy frees up your employees and enables them to apply their skills where they are really needed, helping engineers be engineers again. This automation pays off. Instead of recurring efforts for data handling, analysis, and reporting, POSAC Savvy helps your company spend its resources much more efficiently. Get in contact with us to learn how Wareham Pazak Savvy can help you and your employees analyze your manufacturing data and accelerate your process development.
Okay, and this is just data. I mean, to me, artificial intelligence, that means computers thinking for themselves and actually taking it down the road. It's just not data gathering. So we can go even further. And I think in light of the pandemic, we should really get sufficient knowledge of quality and performance with IT, OT solutions, digitalization, simulations, and in silico testing, as other industries do. Could we do this to pharma? Is it applicable to pharma? Can we transfer products within our network without running validation batches? Or expensive time-consuming stability studies? I mean, really? Do we have to do it all over again? The world of CMOs, contract manufacturing organizations, would be revolutionized. And I think the agility we experience from other industries could be adopted in crisis. The production capacity in all plants, maybe we can use them all. We have seen faster than fast track to market with the COVID-19 vaccines. We have all had them, right? Can we shorten time to market in general with lean mindset and AI systems? I really think we can get it right first time. So that's all I had, and I'm handing over to Lars, which has been in AFRY or OF for the last 30 years, so he has a bunch of experience.
Hello, my name is Lars, and I'm working as a senior project manager and sales and marketing. I have just a brief presentation around AFRY's offer regarding pharmaceutical engineering, what we can offer. So here we try to illustrate that AFRY can be involved in all from raw material handling to the final product packaging through all the process steps. So we have a specialist on all these issues. And here we can see multidiscipline organization for pharmaceutical facility engineering. And we can also, this is also scalable. So we can deliver just, for example, validation or the automation part or the total project. And when we are running our project, we do this in different phases. And AFRY is involved in early stage to define the scope with the client. And we go through from the pre-study, concept design, basic design, and all the way to project execution. And the test and commissioning and handover is the end of the project. And our commitment is from down, professional services. That's normally hourly based expertise up to EPCM or EPC contract, where we take care of the whole project and delivery with a fixed price. So that was a brief presentation on, and I will hand over to Rickard to tell you more about Emtunga modular design.
Thank you, Lars.
Thank you.
Okay, so Rickard Tillander, I'm heading the business development team in Emtunga. And now some people are thinking, oh, a sales guy. But no, not really. I've spent, I'm a chemical engineer by training. I spent my first 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry, and then I've been involved in different project-oriented companies with heavy and complex installation industries. So we've heard a lot about the challenges that we are in right now and in the future, and quite a lot about flexibility and time to market. So why would you or should you consider a modular approach in the end? Because there is a time when you will face the challenges of building a facility. So a modular approach is really a way to have a predictable and robust production process or delivery process for a facility. So instead of having a construction site with a lot of people and casting concrete and everything on site, you move the majority of the work indoors into a workshop environment. And there you utilize well-proven processes, lean-oriented methods, and so on. So it is a way of just work a little bit smarter and faster in the process. And you can also, in a quite good way, have parallel activities. So looking at the time frame, so why is time a benefit? Shorter time. It will give you a better predictability of the schedule and cost. It will give a shorter time to market, which can give you better cash flow in a project. Or instead of a shorter time to market, you can actually have your final investment decision a little bit later in your own development process, so that you can make that decision with less risk. And a modular approach also simplifies some complex challenges that you need to find a solution to. And another benefit is, as I said, when you move a lot of work indoors into your own facility with controlled processes, it will give you a safe construction. For clean room technology or clean room facilities, of course, you will build your clean rooms in a clean environment, which is a major benefit. And you can also integrate some pre-testing in the workshop and look at how you sequence the production in the workshop. And how is that done? If you have a layout, now I'm going to use the laser pointer for our online participants. So if you have a layout, a typical facility layout, you will have to look at that and see how can we divide this into these building modules in a good way. So then you come to a modularized layout. How are we going to structure this and divide different functions into the individual modules? Because it's a benefit if you can keep as much of a function in one module, because then you can also make it more complete prior to shipping the module to the final site. There is also another opportunity. Say, for example, that you have we talked about different products, and say that, for example, that you have a number of products that you're looking at, but you want to build a facility for the first launch product. Then you can do that, and then you can stage your investment so that you can actually run the second stage of a facility expansion without having a major construction site in the close proximity to your operations on the site. So you move that back to the workshop. And there is also another advantage when you break it down even further. You can optimize in which order you build the different modules. Typically, if you have a stick-built conventional building, you have to start with the first floor and then the second floor and so on. But with a modular approach, you can actually start with the part of the facility which is most meaningful to your execution schedule, even though that particular room or area could be up on the third floor, up in the corner. That could come first in the production schedule. So that is a way of really optimizing to have the best possible delivery time. And how that is done, if you look at a schematic schedule of a project, Lars talked about the initial stages of the project with conceptual pre-studies and basic design, and in our case, in this early stage with basic and detail design, we work as you usually do. We work system-oriented, function-oriented, where you have to come up with your P&IDs and whatever. But then at a particular point in time in the detail design, we switch over from a system and function-oriented approach to an area-oriented approach, which is really tied to the production schedule. So then the first area is run first, and so A, B, and C. And when you're done with the detail design and workshop drawings for the A area, that can go into production. And in this way, you can stage the delivery and work, put activities in parallel. There is also an opportunity to have some kind of pre-assembly of a site, facility, or part of a facility if you want to do some pre-testing or so prior to shipping. And then in the end, you ship the modules to the final site and assemble them into a building and run your commissioning and qualification. But the gray one in the bottom here, you can see this is a major advantage, because in parallel with all these activities, when you build the actual facility, the building, you can do your site construction work, the civil works. So that is a major thing that can be put in parallel, and that saves you time. So finishing up with just an example of one particular customer that decided to go modular. They had, actually now I had like this. They had an existing facility with offices and laboratories and so on, where they made their research with also an architectural finish that they wanted to keep. But in the end, when they did this expansion, they decided to go modular, and we built a modular production facility in this area, in between the two other buildings. And then we also delivered a prefabricated warehouse hall, you can say. And all these things tied in very nicely into parallel activities in the schedule. And when you then maybe you think that, okay, all these building blocks and modules, how does that look in the end result? And when you walk into a modular facility, you can actually not see that this were once modules if you're not very skilled what you're to look for. But the other two pictures are just a couple of examples what the finish is like in the end It's just what you can expect in a modern pharmaceutical facility. So modular is one way of really approaching the challenges when it comes to time and quality and predictability. So thank you, and with that, I'm handing over to Katrine to sum up.
Right. Thank you, Rickard, and thank you all for paying attention. I hope that we inspired you, perhaps twisted your minds a bit. We'll now have just a short sort of rearrangement break, and then I'm happy to hand over to my colleague Merete, who will lead the panel discussion, where we hope to involve you all, reflecting on what we heard, on your own thoughts of the possibilities for the future, and perhaps also discuss the challenges that we see ahead. So thank you for now. Just a couple of minutes, I guess. I will kick off the panel discussion.
Okay, hi everyone, and welcome back for this part 2. We'll start up with some discussions about the future and the topics that we have already seen. We have hopefully gotten some questions also in the email, and that has been showing on the screens. And then every one of you are very welcome to also ask questions. Just raise a hand. My name is Merete Bolstad. I'm also working at AFRY, and we will also introduce Bjørn Pedersen. So he's from Diatec Monoclonals. He founded the biotech company back in '88, started producing according to ISO 9001 in '98, and then according to GMP in 2014. The company is specialized in antibody production and conjunction, and currently the company holds 35 employees and an impressive production area here in Forskningsparken at 650 square meters and at Technopolis of 2,500 square meters. Technopolis is the former airport area, yeah, and this name sounds like a Disney movie, doesn't it? So I appreciate your attention, and we now received a glimpse of the future, and then I wanted to address a topic that we have discussed several times at least, regarding the competence need, because with the galloping movement to more digitalized and automated production, do we have the competence we need? Are we educating the youth as we should? And I know, Bjørn, you have some thoughts about this.
Do we have to turn it on?
Yes, and I press and hold a bit, yeah.
Can you hear me now? A little bit closer. Is that fine?
Mm.
Well, as you said, we've been on quite a journey, and I'm coming back to the slide that Christian showed about Industry 3.0, because that was where we actually was coming from back in the 80s, where we had pharma industry in Norway. We had Nycomed, we had Alpharma, we had Weifa, but that was definitely 3.0. Yes. And then there was a nice pool of resources with that level of education and experience. But as we now are traveling quickly and into the 4.0, the issue is that we don't see that focus in our academic institutions. We don't see that when we get people in, and that is, we have apprentices coming in with their bachelors. The first thing they tell me is that, why didn't we learn about quality at the university? Because that fact, that is so important when you work in the industry, that you have that free understanding. And even though you said we don't love regulatory I have grown into fully accepting and admiring QA, and finding out that yes, you can make up some prototypes, but definitely do some risk analysis and do it the proper way. But I think we need to get in tighter discussions with the academic institutions, because if we're going to build a pharma industry back up again in Norway and even beyond what it ever was to catch up with our Scandinavian brothers and sisters, and especially the Danes, I have to say, we have to give some credit to the Danes. We need the right education and recruiting situation, because today the companies in Norway, we have to struggle to get good candidates, and I have to tell our headhunters that no, you cannot take more than 2 from that companies, because we are colleagues. So I mean, and sometimes it's a little bit like I've said that we should actually have a pool in the organization of resources, and I could say that, hey, I need a QA, but I do have a QC that is darn good. Could we do some changes? And I think we need to look into the future from a point where sharing is necessary. We are merely 5.5 million people in Norway. We need to share competence, experience, and we need to share how do we train the next generation. And that's coming from a person that 5 years ago on the stage in this building looked into the audience and said, listen, is there anyone out there that would like my job? It's up for grabs. And it's definitely up for grabs now. So I think that sums up a little bit about the challenge we have. But we need to get in touch with and collaborate with the academics, especially when we see the huge building site which is up next. It's not for getting worms for fishing. It is 100,000 square meters of new life science, and that's important.
So what does the Danes do that we don't?
I think
Anders, do you want to say? Yeah, Anders.
I think I can, I mean, coming
living very close
to Denmark, coming from the south of Sweden. I actually come from yesterday from a conference in the what we call the Medicum Valley, and I think one of the strong strong things that we have in the Swedish Danish collaboration over the Öresund region is exactly what Björn is talking about. It's the academia working together with industry. So we have, of course, there is a strong pharmaceutical, biopharmaceutical driver with, of course, with Novo Nordisk in Denmark being the big star, but with a lot of other companies involved as well. But then there is a collaboration with the academia through the Medicum Valley Alliance and other collaboration, and we have similar things also maybe in the Mälardalen and Stockholm region, but it's certainly very strong in the Copenhagen, Malmö, Lund region.
Kristin?
I also want to add that I think if there are anyone from universities listening now, we should really collaborate with the industry, because when I took my master, I had the opportunity to work with the hospitals, but where were the industry? I really did a master and later on a PhD. Where was the industry? So we need to do masters and PhDs for the industry. That's really where all the research should go. So a closer collaboration. I know that they are doing this in Trondheim. They really make it work. There was a lot of there was some starting issues with Sintef and Trondheim NTNU, but still they're doing it. So we should do it here as well.
Yeah, actually, we are getting one of these PhDs now, which is going to be with the industry. But if this is the point to give a little kick to a minister of ours, the way that he has treated the research council has then, of course, given the effect that all these Nærings PhD has been postponed 1 year. To me, that is not the way you work your way out of crisis. That is, should we call it lack of knowledge? But anyhow, we need to get this back. And we have had 3 bachelor students, because that's something I want to mention, is that we don't only need masters. We need a lot of bachelors in the pharmaceutical industry. We need labor from all levels, and that's important. We need to have those that are engineers. We need the bachelors, and these 3, once again, girls I've had in, they're girls. We have to face and admit they have been very, very impressive in their behavior and their approach to what we have been doing. And at least 1 or 2 of them has said that maybe I don't need that master. And that's good.
When you start to work. But why is also then the industry falling behind? Because you have the automotive industry and the flight industry and everyone on the 4.0 and has been for a long time. Why is the pharmaceutical industry not there?
Well, for some, yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, for someone who's coming from the academia part of it, quite recently, a year ago I was at Lund University still. To me, it's what we were always talking about is that, you know, regulation. It's always about regulation, taking the safe route, not experimenting with, you know, what you don't really know. And that kind of mentality, always, you know, designing for robustness, designing for security or safety, that's a mentality issue, I think. So it's not only regulation, but a bit mentality as well, culture.
And cost?
Of course, but I mean, that's coupled with the regulation. And that's why, you know, with astronomical costs of development, you can't really risk it.
But the flight industry is also regulated. Why is the lobbying differently, maybe? I'm just throwing it out there.
I think we blame it on the regulations, but you know, the regulations can be educated. The regulations can be justified. We need to collect data. We need to show. We just need to write and justify that this is the way to go. So blaming it on the regulations, that's just not fair. I mean, we have to step it up. We have to educate the regulations and the medicines agencies.
Is that something that the cluster can support? Because if you gather with the industry, how can one single company won't be doing the big difference? But like clusters, Bjarte, do you have any input on how that's, because the cluster is also lobbying, right?
Yes, this is a very important topic for our clusters. It's a strategic ambition to combine academia and industry in a better manner, and we see clearly the issue that Björn raised, that the formal education part is hanging behind. So joining in more strategic working groups in a cluster setting, I think, can help explaining the academia what should be done. But they need help to understand what shall I do. This is just like the government level saying, what can we do for the industry? Tell us. So we have to bring them together.
I know this by heart because I actually come from an education as a radiochemist. I know how to make radioactive drugs. And I mean, the Annex 1 and the GMP for sterile medications, they were there 20, 40 years ago. But the regulations for being a QP for radioactive medicines, just, I mean, they're very young. And the regulatories were educated. So it's possible. And now they have to be educated again. It's just that easy.
Yeah, and hang on to that. I mean, you have a very similar situation when it comes to the gene and cell therapies, which are not also not under the same annex as the traditional medicines, and there is a lack of experience of let's say auditing these types of facilities. Which means that is very difficult also to know what is the state of the art, what is the standard, and what will the auditors actually look at when they come to look, because they don't even know, they haven't done it before. So I think it is also very important to have a collaboration with the auditors and the auditive bodies. And of course, if you look back in a few years back in time, also, I mean, the FDA, they in the US, I mean, they saw the development where less and less drugs were coming onto the market, and they then turned to the industry and said, okay, we do not want to regulate you into producing less medicines or less pharmaceuticals. What can we do? And that's when the entire wave of risk-based validation and qualification came on, and which is now more or less standard. And I think we need to move in that direction in the other areas as well.
Okay, then moving to the next. Oh, okay.
You mentioned the COVID-19, and let's hope now that, because during the COVID-19 there will have been taken shortcuts. There has been done a lot of stuff. So what we need to find out now is to retrospective go through all that happened and find out what was the risk, how was the risk handled, did we take some shortcuts that really saved mankind, to be talking popular, and then the regulatory offices need to take that into consideration when they are looking, because they have also said that they should go more lean on biosimilars. I'm not sure I'm getting the whole explanation from them, but anyhow, I think hopefully the COVID-19 can give us a lot of information, of data, given that people have recorded them.
But now we're moving over to collecting the data and all the data gathering. What are the largest challenges with utilizing artificial intelligence in this R&D and production of pharmaceuticals?
Well, yeah,
that's
I mean,
your favorite question, isn't it?
like, yeah, almost.
Might be said.
I would say the amount and quality of data, because I mean, it doesn't matter what algorithm you use if you don't have good data or enough data, then it doesn't really, it won't be
and
good
it needs
anyways.
to be translated.
That too, of course. So you need to, and currently, what kind of data do we have today? How much is it? That's I think those are burning questions right now, and I think with the advances now in continuous manufacturing, that will of course simplify data acquisition, data processing, and that will help spur on this AI revolution that we might see. But it's still some way to go, and we need to be careful and need to think a lot about what data, how do we collect it, how do we validate it, how do we make sure that it is good data. No arguments there, okay.
Everyone agrees. Do we have any questions? Yeah? Kadrin is running with the mic.
Yeah, so I'm Evy Stavik from GE Healthcare. So in terms of building up a new manufacturing process using single-use technology, using path continuous manufacturing, and sort of starting that for a new product, I think that totally sort of makes sense, and that's one scenario. But do you have examples where you've sort of gone in a life cycle management and sort of implemented that in a global strategy, regulatory-wise, in your experience?
Who wants the question? Anders is...
I mean, again, coming back to single-use technology, it has been around for quite a while. There are quite a few companies that are utilizing it. It is being utilized, especially now for the COVID-19 vaccines, for example. It was a fundamental technology used for that. But there are not that very many, I would say, examples of complete single-use technology facilities. People are still doing hybrids where they use single-use technology for parts of it. I have been part of building 2 facilities that were actually built completely on single-use, but those are still rare. And there are, I mean, as you say, there are challenges in that, especially coming back to what I mentioned in my presentation before, with the I would say with supply chain, and with the let's say having the stock, getting the material. I can imagine that during the pandemic now, supply of these materials has been a very big challenge, because a lot of the materials actually manufactured elsewhere in the world, and with the let's say supply chain breaking down partly during the that is a challenge. So I think that's something that you have to look into when going in that direction.
But picking up on the point of single use, you told us that the waste handling was that the environmental footprint was lower than for ordinary production. But what about the plastics and the oceans and all of because we are not now moving out of the single use for our own personal use.
Well, I think, yeah, and it's a very good point. I mean, we are, I'm not really sure about the situation in Norway, but in Sweden, I mean, we now have a tax for plastic bags when we go to shop our groceries and so on. So we are moving away from plastic bags, away from plastic packaging and so on. And here we are arguing for using plastic more in manufacturing. But one side of this is of course, when we talk about plastic waste in the environment, the plastic waste that is produced when you use single-use technology, it will never end up in the environment, because I mean that is pharmaceutical waste. It is biocontaminated, which means that everything that you collect will be taken off and incinerated. So let's say the risk and the impact of having plastics in the environment is definitely not there when it comes to single-use technology.
Thank you.
Diatec has only been producing in single use for all years, and as you say, every piece of plastic we are using is being disposed of accordingly to strict rules, and that is not an environmental issue. I think, as you pointed out, it's the tremendous amount of cleaning solutions and the use of water that you would have to do instead in stainless steel and so on. So, but it's definitely been a support challenge during the last years that everyone is going for the same pile of products available. So we are now facing delivery times of 12 to 18 months on a lot of products. And that is a challenge to the industry.
I just want to sum up the because it's always a question. How can you say that single use is sustainable? Well, it's not sustainable in itself, but it's sustainable because using stainless steel, the way we produce stainless steel tanks will have a much larger CO2 impact. It will have a impact that is huge compared to producing plastics, and also the waste handling and all the use of water and vapor and everything that is really not necessary with and cleaning validation. I mean, everyone that has been through cleaning validation, that's another thing that we hate. We don't want to do that. So single use, yes.
Single use. But coming back to cleaning validation and cross-contamination, because we have now discussed a bit the impact or the possibilities of shared facilities. M. Tunga also touched in on that. How does that work, and what can we do to reduce that?
I mean, one thing, again, coming back to the single-use technology compared to other, I mean, in a single-use technology environment, it's much easier to make a completely closed process because you are, I mean, technically welding everything together, and it is a closed process. So you keep your process contained in your process bags. So that is one thing, but then again, I mean, coming back, I mean, the challenge will be there. I mean, we cross contamination is one of the biggest challenges in pharmaceutical manufacturing in total, and you don't simply get rid of that just because you move into single-use technology or any other technology for that matter. So I think that is more a question of having the procedures in place, keeping track of your materials, and all of these things can also be much more automated nowadays. You can use RFIDs and so on to make sure that which material is where in your facility at a specific time. There is no risk that material A, which should not be in a certain room, is there because you know where everything is. So I think that those type of applications are very important when it comes to keeping track of your materials and keeping track of cross-contamination and mix-ups.
I think that possibility with the flexibility, that was really tested in many big pharma companies during the pandemic, because we all of a sudden we had the vaccine, but the bottleneck was really to fill it. What CEPI and WHO did, they went through the whole worldwide big pharma and told them who of you can really flex your factory, who of you can just produce in campaign, can fill in campaigns, and that's lots about cross-contamination, and it's all about having the routines in place, wash it out, wash in, and just do it in campaign, and then you're back to normal portfolio again. That's really that's what happened.
So with all this artificial intelligence data, we see, of course, that we have to protect our data, and we also have to protect our patents. And with this, everything being up in the clouds, or how do we do that, and what is the risks? Anders, I know you touched briefly on that note in your talk. Can you say a bit more?
I mean, obviously, the data integrity is a key focus area now for regulatory industry, making sure that because we are now collecting much more data, we need to make sure that data is actually, as Mikael said, is valid. And that it is not tampered with, both when it comes to the research and development phase for products, but also, of course, when you do manufacturing, because you need to be able to go back and review your data. So, but when it comes to the let's say technological challenge, I would say that there's not a huge difference between the technological challenge of securing and making sure your data is safe in the pharmaceutical industry compared to other industries. It is, I mean, cloud computing, your service, the risk of hacker attacks and so on it is very similar. It is the same. I mean, we're using the same type of computers, same types of CPUs and everything. So that is more of an IT strategy. How do you protect your IT structure in your companies or research facilities? Then from the IP point of view, I think that's a very big and also interesting area, and I think it's something that very much applies, of course, for the early startup companies as well. If we look at the big companies in this industry, like the AstraZenecas and Novo Nordisk and Novartis and so on, I mean, they have huge departments only working with IP, and they have the experience to do it. But it is definitely a challenge for smaller startups to actually very early on have an IP strategy, because that will impact where you go in the future. How do you set up the IP? How do you set up the patents? How do you make the contracts with your consultants so that you are sure that the IP rights is with you, the company, not with them? How do you set up the contracts with your employees so that you have the IP rights and so on? And that is a very big challenge, and I think it's something that a lot of startups and early companies are struggling with. So I think that is a very interesting and big area that needs to be looked into.
And I would just like to circle back to the IT part of what you were talking about, because I mean, it hinges on, of course, of how we protect our services and so on. But the common theme of what we've been talking about here is a bit of education and sharing knowledge. And that's something perhaps we shouldn't do when it comes to IT security. Because, you know, the weakest link and all that in a chain, if somebody calls you, you know, all that kind of thing, and you answer the wrong question the right way, that could lead to something. And so I think a big part of it is also about education, education, and not only in terms of then how do we do the process design, but also in terms of IT security.
There is a question.
So I'm Hanna Slenehox from Sintef, and so you're talking a lot about this flexibility and a lot of the data. It will be general. It will be these kind of tools that can be applied to any sector. Now, I was wondering a little bit. So in medicine, you have the cell therapies, you have biosimilars and monoclonals, you have chemical synthesis. So for small compounds, nucleic acids. So a lot of different medicinal compounds that are produced in very different way, and traditionally it has been specialized facilities that do one of these segments and not all of them. So I just wondered, could you think a little bit about or reflect a little bit about where does the flexibility stop? Is there something that cannot be interchanged, or do we have some new possibilities that we didn't have before?
That's an interesting question. Yeah. Who wants to? Anders.
I mean, it is a very good question and a very valid point. Of course, I mean, there is a limit to flexibility. And as you say, it is because as I was talking about very briefly in my speech there, what you can do is that you can, of course, build your facility in a flexible way, where you build the stage, the ballroom, where you can have different types of technologies moving in and out. But still, there will be a limit to what you can have. I mean, you probably cannot have a chemical synthesis process moved in and out in the same way as a biopharmaceutical manufacturing. So I would say that this. I think there is a bit of a line when it comes to at least on the API side between the chemical, the traditional chemical, and the pharma manufacturing. Within the biopharma, I think if we're talking about the small to medium-sized volumes that are applicable here, then the rooms, the media needs are pretty similar, depending on which level of clean rooms you need, depending on so. But you will still need WFIs. You will need the gases. You will need to have a class C or B, C, or D clean room. So that can be made flexible. But moving over to chemical manufacturing, that's maybe another issue. Then there is another line in the sand when you go from API manufacturing and to formulation. Again, formulation can be so many things, and I would say the facility or and so on for aseptic filling is not the same as a tablet manufacturing facility. So flexibility when it comes to within biopharmaceutical API, definitely. Within the different parts of formulation, definitely. But complete flexibility, no, I think that's maybe something we have to still dream a little bit about.
Yeah, I guess you also can talk about the flexibility when you move from one thing is that you want to protect your product. Either you have it bioburden controlled or you have it sterile manufacturing, right? And when you, as soon as you move into manufacturing of viruses or bacteria, and you have a biosafety level, right? That you can't cross that border. You have to follow the rules. And again, on the other side, radioactive. Then you have to protect both your products and your operators. So the flexibility kind of stops there, I think.
That's what we're saying now, but we also said no to some of the things that we're doing today 50 years ago.
I think one of the keys is actually, I would say, decoupling the process and the facility. Because traditionally, if we look back with stainless steel and other, old facilities, so to speak, the facility and the process is very much integrated, which means that if the process changes, you need to tear down and change the facility. But if you're able to decouple them, so the facility is pretty much one thing, and then the process is separated from that, then you can much easier make changes to your process in an existing facility. So I think that decoupling is key to have at least the first step of flexibility in your facilities.
Bjarte, sorry. Do we have any more questions on the email?
I am a teacher. I can shout.
Yeah, but it's.
But the people online will not hear it.
Yeah.
It's actually a follow-up question, very simple. How do you decouple process? You understand. That is the key.
Yes, and very good question. And I think the obvious answer is by using mobile equipment, meaning that you have equipment that can be easily transferred in and out of your production rooms, and thus if you require something else, you just move out the equipment that you have and move in other equipment. But you make sure that your facility has all the necessary media, clean media and black media, that at least you can foresee using for the type of processes that you have. But I think the key is to have mobile equipment, not fixed and not built into the facility. In a way.
Bjarte?
Yes, we have one question which I think was directed towards the first presentations before the break. Someone presented a mini factory, and a question whether the upstream process, how that looked like, and if it's a wave type bioreactor or perhaps a stirred bioreactor, which is upstream.
No, that was a perfusion reactor, if I remember correctly, with an TTF filter, I think, or ATF filter, either or.
Okay, then we're rounding. We
Yeah,
have
I
more.
have
Let's see.
one question, perhaps a bit outside the topic, but I'm a bit interested in what's happening outside the factory and how that's integrated with monitoring system inside, perhaps. We have been through pandemics and crises, and that has shown us that we have no control over the supply chains. And you may have addressed it a little bit, but I want you perhaps to elaborate on it. And that's how can you monitor the security of the supply chain and integrate it to the functioning of the fabric to deliver in crisis and pandemics?
Running a factory,
I
yeah.
can speak a little bit of experience then. You cannot have any control over governments in a pandemic situation. We learned that when our trailers was halted on the border between Sweden and Norway due to an EU directive. Take an example, VWR had their main warehouse in Germany, and Germany made a ban on exporting gloves, whatever. You can't plan, you can't protect from that because it overrules everything. And then again, everyone in business knows that just in time is very important, so you're not supposed to keep stock, at least not over 31st of December. So it is a challenge logistically wise. As I said, we are operating 12 to 18 months delivery times. And you can go through a situation where something fails. We have, it's not been any secret, producing the antibody for Nordic Nanovector. And then after 4 years, suddenly data doesn't show what it was. And then if you're operating on an 18-month delivery time, you would have a few barrels of media sitting somewhere, which you will then need to find out what else to do with. So yes, it's a continuous struggle. But of course, you do a lot of supplier approval, quality agreements. And I have to admit that sometimes you have to make a quick little lie and said, we're definitely doing COVID-19. and luckily we did in Diatec because we produced antibody for a COVID-19 test. But that was, you know, the key to getting into the front supply line. But I want to come back to one thing since it's the cluster. You asked about IT and IP and startups. That's definitely a mission for the cluster organization to, you know, arrange things like this to make for us where the startups can learn a little bit from the more experienced. So that's a definite value of, and you have an innovation hangout tonight, don't you? Yes.
And that's the topic that we wanted to round off a bit with also, is that how can the...
Can you say one more thing regarding the...
Everyone has
yeah.
a lot on their heart. We should keep on.
Business continuity planning is something that we haven't done enough and that we need to do more of. Sort of have multiple suppliers, look at the both supply chain and how we will deliver the products. And that's something that not only the pharma business needs to do more of, but all industries need to think about in a new way, I think.
But Katrin, you can keep it because we also had wanted to touch a bit base on the topic of how the consultancy business can support the industry and with the startups and everything. Maybe you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yeah, so we work a lot with startups, as we said, and of course that's, I mean, the tricky thing is really to manage scale up, right? Because you have this great idea and you have a team that's usually very engaged in doing this, and all of a sudden those major issues come, right? You need to have a facility, you need quite a lot of money, you need to go through all those phases. So that's what we try to work with. We've been doing that mainly within future food, sort of novel food that's producing proteins in new ways, fats in new ways. It's actually not that far off from the pharma business. You could use bioreactors to do this. And we help those companies to scale up, to sort of use the money wisely, to have knowledge sharing and find collaborations, but also to find finance in different ways. And we do that by putting together like workshops with experts to sort of support those startups in a cost-efficient way. So we have a number of assignments and companies that we help in that way, actually.
So with that final little commercial break, we want to say thank you, and thank you for everyone listening, participating, and to the panel and the speakers. And hopefully we'll see a lot of you in the hangout later this afternoon. Thank you.